de dolores articulares. Ya basta de sufrir.
Con una cápsula diaria del veneno de abejas, volví a vivir sin dolores.
B-Miracle. Llame ahora y reciba 2 meses de B-Miracle en oferta especial. Ordena 2 y recibe 3 meses de tratamiento. Pero si llama ahora mismo con su orden, recibirá la crema B-Miracle de acción inmediata completamente gratis. Para ese dolor rebelde y localizado que a veces aparece. Pero tiene que marcar ahora. B-Miracle. Una cápsula por día. El milagro de vivir sin dolor toda la vida.
Investing in real estate doesn't have to be a pipe dream. But how do you find, analyze, renovate, finance investment properties without getting ripped off? My name is Andrew Glisson.
Welcome to the new health. As people are getting sicker and sicker at younger and younger ages, we are bringing thought leaders that are revolutionizing the healthcare industry to make change in the world. Today we have with us Dr. Andrew Sun. He's a men's health urologist at Urology Partners of North Texas. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Sun.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So I would love to start talking about, we know we're here to talk about men's health and wellness because it's so imperative. And we had talked a bit about why do men come see you and how is that pivotal in people getting into the healthcare space?
Yeah. So I'm a men's health urologist. You know, urology covers a lot of different things, but within that I have a very special niche, which is that I only see men and mostly for quality of life and sexual dysfunction issues. And it's interesting because in many ways we serve almost like a primary care doctor for a lot of these guys. You know, men are good at a lot of things. Taking care of themselves is not one of them. And unlike, you know, let's say both sexes have a pediatrician when they're young, and then as women leave the pediatrician, they usually have a gynecologist, obstetrician. Men don't really have that. And because of personality, they're more likely to just kind of sit at home and not worry about things. And so there's this pivotal age gap in between like 18 and say 40, where all of the stuff that's going to affect them down the line, heart disease, cholesterol, all of these things, become a factor. And if we can target those men and intervene on them early, then we can help prevent some of those serious things. So how do you target a group of men aged 18 to like 40? It's through the things that they care about, namely sexual function, fertility, these men's health type of issues.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you had mentioned to me earlier, we have gynecology for women, but for men, it's called andrology.
Correct. Andrology meaning the study of man. And you know, it's a significantly smaller field because it's a subspecialty within urology, but most of us urologists kind of serve that role. It's very rewarding. You know, I get to see a lot of guys and help them out through a lot of things. A lot of times I'm the first physician that they've seen for the last 20 years, and being able to make that positive impact early on is very awesome.
How are you seeing that younger and younger men are coming to see you at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think people traditionally thought of urology as this like thing for like older guys, you know, maybe when your prostate's enlarged or getting up at night to pee, which is fairly common. But we are definitely seeing a shift towards men in their even as early as 20s, 30s, 40s. Some of it is as, you know, these chronic diseases start to happen earlier, and some of it, fortunately, because I think the message is getting out there and people are being a little bit better about sort of taking care of themselves earlier on.
Do you recommend that we, as in the more primary care space, recommend that someone see you just as prevention or just as an early assessment?
Yeah, you know, personally, if a guy that age already has a primary care doctor, he's already winning the game because he's already done something that a lot of people don't do. Luckily, they're able to treat most of these things. In those situations, we serve as like a referral for those specific sexual dysfunction or fertility issues. Of course, sometimes it's the opposite, and I send a lot of my patients to a primary care doctor who don't have a primary care doctor, but they came in to see me because they have this one issue that they care about, and then ultimately I'm serving as their entry point, but we got to find them a primary care doctor.
So you and I have spoken a little bit about this check engine light that is the penis. I would love for you to actually speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, in my clinic, there's a lot of like sports stuff and car analogies and things, and men generally tend to like this idea of, you know, the body as a system and there are components that you fix. And so if you treat it like a car, then what is that check engine light? How do you know something's going on? Well, you got to choose something that both reflects the overall status of the health of the body and something that men tend to pay attention to. So that happens to be the penis. It's the thing that most men are going to pay attention to. And also, you know, erectile dysfunction is probably one of the earliest harbingers of cardiovascular disease, high cholesterol, diabetes, because those are the three most common causes of erectile dysfunction. And so we sort of think of the penis as this check engine light, where if you start to notice some issues happening with your penis, then it probably reflects that there are some of those same issues happening systemically. And you can use that as like the canary in the coal mine to start to treat the other things, because it's the thing that they're going to pay attention to.
No, that's great. So what we're seeing that I'm saying kids, younger and younger, men are coming in younger and younger, and this check engine light is something that men should be seeing, and it's usually an erectile dysfunction thing that we're seeing in their 20s?
I would say erectile dysfunction earlier on. Fertility is a big one, right? Because that kind of perfectly captures that, let's say, roughly 20s and 30s age range. And you know, if the population level trends showing that sperm counts are declining, low testosterone is increasing, a lot of that is due to lifestyle factors. And so fertility is another big entry point, because the guys are trying to start a family, they're having trouble. We check their sperm, it's not so good. That I usually tell them, healthy body, healthy sperm. Right? And the opposite's also true. So it's either that or it's the sexual dysfunction piece.
So when someone comes into your practice, tell me a little bit about how that goes. When someone comes in, when they first show up, tell me how you process that, or how that intake works for you.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny. I've tried lots of different ways to like break the ice, and I, you know, the stuff that I talk about is a fairly sensitive issue. I have learned over time that most men like to just keep it straight, and even if they feel awkward, if I can sort of disarm them from that, then it's a much easier conversation. There's pretty much nothing that I haven't already heard. Most men are very embarrassed by things. So funnily enough, I basically walk in the room and say, "Hey, Andrew Son, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. How's your penis doing?" I just ask them that straight up, and they're so, you know, like, okay, I guess we'll just start talking about it, and it just makes it a lot easier, and they'll just start telling me, because realistically, I see a very small subset of conditions, and so I know already generally why they're here. It's going to be one of those things, all of which relate down to sexual function or fertility. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes. And then we just start talking, and you know, usually if a young guy comes in and they have some erectile dysfunction, then we'll start asking them questions about testosterone. We might check those labs on, you know, anybody that hasn't had those checked before. We might just do a general health assessment. Sometimes if you look at them and, you know, you can kind of tell what their BMI is, if they're obese, if they have diabetes, you already kind of know what might be going on. And then you just have to do the necessary testing.
And do you find that how do you reassure people? Are they feeling like this is a done deal? I'm sure there's some depression or some...
There is, yeah, for sure. There is a significant correlation between sexual dysfunction, whether it's erectile dysfunction, Peyronie's disease, and you know, depression and anxiety and these kinds of things. Sometimes, in fact, it's the depression and anxiety that's causing the erectile dysfunction, right? These things are very cyclical. So, of course, you know, I usually tell guys specifically about that, you know, there's the biological pieces I can treat, but then there's also the psychological pieces, and you need all of those to work together. And sometimes you can be biologically healthy, but psychologically unwell, and almost thinking about your penis too much, and that's actually causing erectile dysfunction.
So how is your holism? Like when we talk about holism, we're talking about having all of those parts together of not just conventional medicine, but also lifestyle or counseling, or maybe even sex therapists. So tell me a little bit about how do you address all of that for helping your patients?
Yeah, I kind of tell the guys, like, you know, there's a biological and psychological component. I mostly work on the biological aspect, but I have partners that work on the psychological part. I have a lot of good relationships with sex therapists, people that are very, very adjunctive to, you know, what I do. Sometimes I send them patients, sometimes they send me patients. And ultimately, you know, yes, you could just say, oh, okay, here's a Viagra, have a nice day. But you're not at all getting into why and what you could potentially treat. Most of the times these guys are younger, and when you're younger, there are definitely things that you can do to help prevent these problems, sexual dysfunction, erectile dysfunction, from getting worse. You just have to address the root causes, and usually the root cause is not like a pill. It's some kind of systemic hormonal, vascular, neurologic thing that's going on. And if you can address those things, then you can create a better outcome from their sexual aspect, but also a lot of other things too, like preventing a heart attack,
Yeah, so you said vascular, neurologic, hormonal.
Those
so
would be
those
the
are the big three things that you're going to be looking at. So when we say there are a lot of things that people can do for this, can you give us a few hints of some of those things that people might be able to do at home?
Sure. Erectile dysfunction is not just taking a pill. If you improve your lifestyle and your overall health, your penis will thank you and it will also improve, right? So number one is, I think, sleep. Definitely the most important activity that we do every day. I always try to flip the script. We're always thinking I got these 10 things to do and then I'll sleep. And I tell them you have to flip that around and say your first priority activity every day is sleep, and then everything else comes secondary to that. Because if you don't sleep, guess what? Testosterone is made while you sleep. So if you sleep poorly, then you have low T. If you have low T, your erections, your muscle mass, your strength, your energy, none of that works as well. Vasculature is a huge one when it comes to the penis. We're talking high blood pressure avoidance, right? Sometimes it's diet, sometimes it's too much salty food, sometimes it's just gigantic portions. We want to avoid that. And then neurologically, that one is both like rare, but also when it happens, it's harder to treat. So we basically see two types of guys with neurological issues, either post-trauma / post-surgical, say a guy who's had a prostatectomy that will affect the nerves to the penis, or a motor vehicle accident of some kind. And then the biggest one is diabetes, right? Probably the most common thing that I sort of sometimes joke with the patients. I'm like, okay, top 5 causes of ED: diabetes, 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 and diabetes. Because it hits everything. It hits the neurologic, it hits the hormonal aspect, it hits the vascular aspect. And so, we have an epidemic of diabetes happening, and so sometimes it's dietary counseling. It's interesting because I'm a urologist, but I will give these guys like dietary counseling, right? Because it's a hugely important piece of it as well.
That's great. Are you noticing, is there a slippery slope, like when sugar starts creeping up before it's diabetes?
For sure. Interestingly, I am not usually interacting with the patients at the stage early enough to catch that. That's why it's really important to have a primary care doctor for all the guys out there, because they will watch these things over time. Usually by the time they get to me, they already have erectile dysfunction. And so that means they may already be diabetic, right? And so then I have to work on things. Diabetics also have a much higher rate of low testosterone, and so sometimes fixing the testosterone actually has been shown to improve diabetic control, glucose response, that kind of stuff. So it all kind of works hand in hand.
That's great. That's really good information to have.
Yeah.
And so always have that primary care physician, and then if you need a referral to urology, Dr. Sun is here for you. So could you please let our audience know how they can reach you and what you're working on right now?
Yeah, sure. So our practice is in the DFW area. We have 7 offices. Our website our group is called Urology Partners of North Texas, so upnt.com. You can find us there. We have a phone number there, and other things that I'm working on right now. It's just more of this general sort of message that men need to take care of themselves better, and it is not. We have to normalize the conversation about erectile dysfunction, sexual dysfunction, make it less awkward, because it's really a great way to get men involved in their healthcare earlier than they do right now.
I love that. Normalize the conversation. That's what we want to see. So thank you so much for being with us here today. You'll join us next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Can't wait to be back.
So stay tuned after these messages for our next guest.
If you're on supplemental oxygen, heavy and awkward tanks can be a burden. Now you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, portable oxygen therapy that moves with you.
With my Inogen, now I'm able to do the things that I've always loved. I just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen systems are so small and light, you're free to leave the house without the hassles of an oxygen tank.
I could play golf again. I could go grocery shopping. I'm free again.
With the Inogen, I can handle my own oxygen. I can carry my own oxygen. I go anywhere with this. Look how small it is.
And right now, you can try an Inogen portable oxygen system for 30 days risk-free. Call us right now. If you qualify, we'll send you an Inogen system to use for 30 days risk-free. Your insurance may even cover your new Inogen system.
If you're on oxygen, you need to be using an Inogen.
Call 800-367-1753. That's 800-367-1753. ¿Tiene un carro, camioneta o SUV viejo en su casa? Aunque no funcione y piense que es chatarra, usted puede llamar al número en pantalla y donarlo a Susan G. Komen para ayudar a salvar una vida. Nuestro personal calificado va hasta su domicilio a recogerlo de forma totalmente gratis. La donación de su automóvil, camioneta o SUV viejo ayuda a apoyar a las personas afectadas por el cáncer de mama, así como también al trabajo vital de Komen en investigación, atención al paciente y educación. Necesitamos su ayuda. Tal vez considere que su auto viejo es chatarra o que no vale nada, pero ese auto no deseado es importante para que Susan G. Komen continúe ayudando a las personas con cáncer de mama. Llame al número en pantalla hoy. Iremos a recoger su auto rápidamente. También recibirá una deducción de impuestos por su donación caritativa. Ayúdenos a ayudar. Llame ya.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now. Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096.
Welcome back. We're here today with Dr. Diane Mueller, naturopathic doctor, who works with women, mostly ages 35 to 60, taking their life from average to awesome, working with their health, wellness, hormones. Welcome today, Dr. Mueller.
Thank you, Jessica. We're going to have a great conversation on pleasure today.
So for those of us, you haven't seen this yet, but we've been talking off camera already about all of the pleasure that women can experience in taking their life from average to awesome. And so I'm so excited she's here with us today. So let's go ahead and just get started and dive right into pleasure. So pleasure and desire, I would love to hear about that from you.
Yeah, I think we should start with the fact that pleasure is not just about desire, but it's actually something we require as human beings in this world.
Okay, all right, let's dive in. Tell me more.
So why is that, right? So many times I feel like in life, we are really told that pleasure is that thing we do at the end of the day. If we have time, if we're not too tired, if we've taken care of the kids, our partner, ourselves, our exercise, our career, whatever our obligations are. And pleasure is just kind of this thing that maybe we fit in. Mm-hmm. And it's really unfortunate because we have so many pleasure receptors on our body, and we were given these for a reason, for a really important reason, because these pleasure receptors are essential for health. And so I think it's important that we dive in a little bit more and talk about what that actually means. And so this oxytocin, that is the pleasure hormone. Oxytocin is oftentimes thought of as like the cuddle hormone, the orgasm hormone, the love hormone, but it does so much more. So this pleasure hormone helps to balance our serotonin, our happy hormone. It helps to balance our dopamine, our motivation hormone. It helps to balance our melatonin and increase our melatonin, our sleep hormone. And now we even see at least some studies that are coming out showing that it is improving the neurological signal that actually enhances GLP. GLP is this peptide that's gotten so much press recently to help with weight loss and appetite control. And now we're even seeing some evidence that oxytocin can help with that.
This is amazing. So oxytocin, I know a lot of us have thought about oxytocin as when it's released with orgasm, or oxytocin made during for childbirth. But to have it actually be impactful in that cascade to improve all of these other healthy feel-good hormones is really impactful. I love that information. I don't think it's something that a lot of people are thinking about.
Yeah, and there's even further studies that have shown cardiovascular disease improvement, coronary artery disease improvement, and even perhaps helping with things like ADHD and autism. So it's really important. I really think this is why we were given these pleasure receptors, right? It's not just this thing around, like I said, it's not just this thing around the end of the day. It's actually something that we can use. We can use pleasure to balance almost our entire lives.
Let's talk about pleasure then. So I know here we're talking so much about pleasure having to do with sex, as you said, end of the day, maybe even having some guilt around that. So instead of that, how can we flip the script and then start our day off with pleasure?
It's a great question, and I appreciate that, because making this actionable is really important. And I think the knowledge we're talking about here is one fundamental thing, right? To actually begin to say, oh, this is not selfish, this is self-care. So when you're saying flip the script on that, I think that's one of the important things is, yeah, this is no longer selfish. This is actually me caring for myself in order to care for my entire life. So how do we do that? One of the biggest things I think is to take the sexuality out of it to begin with and actually realize that pleasure is connected to presence. Our ability to be and experience pleasure is deeply connected to our ability to experience and be present. So then in practicing that, it can be starting, right, with simple things like I'm gonna wake up and maybe I have 5 minutes before my day starts to sit down with my coffee and actually really enjoying that and really tasting and experiencing the sensations of the chair under me while I'm resting. You know, for me, it's my furry stuff. I have furry stuff all over my home. So it's I drink my coffee and I experience the feather pillows and the feather blankets and all the furry things I have. But that's the point, is like those sensations are that experience of presence. And the more we experience presence and practice pleasure from a standpoint of I'm drinking my coffee, this is enjoyable. I'm listening to my music, this is enjoyable. I'm hugging my partner or my kid or my dog, this is enjoyable. That's actually the practice of pleasure throughout the day.
So for me, it's I wake up in the morning, I take deep breaths because I love the feeling of deep breaths, just slow deep breaths, and I scrunch my toes on the sheets.
Yes.
It's just feeling that sensation on my feet of the soft sheets and everything, and just feeling good in my body. And just breathing in that space. So is that an oxytocin release?
It would be, right? Because anything that is tuning us into the sensations of the body, and especially where the skin is being touched, can have the possibility of releasing oxytocin. So it absolutely can be, right? This is why we see studies on petting a dog or giving hugs, right? It's that tactile sensation that is releasing that. And I think the difference between whether or not is a pleasure activity or not is when you're talking about scrunching the toes, for example, we can do that real fast and not pay attention. So the difference really is like, am I taking that moment to be present in my day, to experience the sensation that I love, and that's when we're actually getting the oxytocin release.
So what could we say to ourselves? Could we give ourselves a mantra that we say? So something that we would say to ourselves every day that would be a reminder or keep us present in the moment, like, I'm going to feel this moment. Or is there something that you would recommend?
Oh, there's lots of things I would recommend.
Great, let's do it. I want to hear them.
One of the first things I think is with mantras is really breaking down what we're trying to change in our lives, right? So if the goal is to say experience pleasure, perhaps it could be something like I am worth, or I value, or something along those lines. I value this moment and I value myself enough to give myself pleasure. Right, something along those lines. If we're trying to change something else in our lives, like, you know, sometimes it can be body stuff, right? Sometimes maybe it's like my thighs are too big or my hips are too big or whatever else. It can be putting our hands on our body in these places and saying, wow, these parts of my body are so valuable and they do so much for me and they are allowed and I want them to experience pleasure. And I think the difference with it when we talk about mantras really is that it's important that we're not just like saying them, that's valuable, but we're also allowing ourselves the experience of like, wow, what is it like if I put my hands on my thighs and I say, these thighs deserve to experience pleasure. These thighs, I love these thighs. They carry me throughout the day, and actually feeling that inside of our entire body, that's going to release so much more. And it's actually going to help us embody the pleasure, which is part of the experience as well.
I love this. I want to keep on this whole thighs. Women have a thigh thing.
Yes, we do.
We have a belly thing. We have a everything.
Hip thing.
We have all the things. So if we were to say that, I mean, I would think that allowing yourself to feel pleasure in touching your thigh, like just running your hand on your thigh and loving yourself and saying these thighs are valuable. They help me walk through the world. Yes. They help me even in sexuality, sensuality, or they help me even if it's not in that mindset, how it could be helpful and really allowing yourself to feel love for touching your own skin in that way. Do you find that helps women really embrace where they are and then turn that maybe self-ick into pleasure?
Oh, 100%. And one of the things we see about pleasure is there is a relationship between pleasure and body image and self-confidence and genital image. All of these things actually are deeply related to our capacity to experience pleasure. So the more that we're actually able to break this down and say, hey, I am confident in my body, I love my body, and sometimes that comes with the paradox of loving our body and doing the things that we want to do in life to improve it so we feel even better. But it is a paradox, and it really does help to experience that feeling in our thighs, the feeling of our hands in our thighs on this example, and actually being able to wake up our body to pleasure. Because another thing people don't really realize is that we have these erogenous zones all over our body. You know, our elbows have been shown to have, erogenous and pleasure parts, our knees, behind our knees, right? So obviously the more kind of sexy tissue, like our genitals or our nipples, for example, get more of the press, but our entire body has the capacity to experience pleasure. So it starts sometimes, like we're talking about, with our hands on our thighs and waking up and loving this tissue so that our body and our cells can actually experience more pleasure.
This is wonderful. So throughout the day, start the day maybe with some type of pleasure practice as you're speaking, and that probably allows your whole day to be set off in a better way.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. So starting with that, and then we can build from there. So I'm a huge fan as far as habit changes around needing to have cues, right? Needed to have those triggers. So we want to take it back, and I think the work of James Clear around Atomic Habits did a really good job of looking at how we as humans change. And so starting this in the beginning of the day, right, with some sort of cue. What is going to be your cue or your trigger to actually remember to do this pleasure activity? And so that could be something as simple as, okay, well, maybe there's a candle by your bed that says you've written pleasure on it. So when you turn over and you get your alarm, you hit your alarm clock, you see that pleasure, like, okay, I'm going to scrunch my toes or do whatever it is, right? And then we want to have those cues throughout the rest of the day, those triggers, those reminders, whether it's alarms on our phone, or maybe we wear a bracelet that we've made or we've bought that represents pleasure, something like that, to help us tune into these tiny little cues. Yes, sensation throughout the day.
Oh, this is wonderful information. Thank you so much for sharing. I know you're going to be back with us next week.
Yes.
So we're going to talk more about this, but if you could please let everyone know what you're working on right now and how they can reach you.
Thank you. I'm always working on so many things, but one of the most important things about any of my work is that it really is geared mostly for women from 35 to 60, like you mentioned, that are really designing and working to take their health, their hormones, or relationships from average to awesome. So I have a three-part series book coming out. I have a podcast called The Libido Lounge. And then, of course, you can find me in any of my group education or one-on-one work at My Libido Doc.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. We'll be back after these messages with our next guest.
Are you nearly maxed out on your credit cards? It doesn't matter if you're using your credit cards for fun or to survive. At the end of the month, your statements come in, and you can either pay them or you can't. If you can't, late fees and interest rates get tacked on. And now you're struggling just to make the minimum payment due. Do you feel trapped? Am I talking to you? Good, because I personally researched some companies that can help you. They may be able to reduce your credit card balances by 50% and stop the late fees. If you qualify, please call our special debt hotline number right now for a complimentary free 5-minute consultation. Deal with your credit card problem now before it gets much worse and put more money back in your pocket. Trust me, I've been there too. Call right now.
Call 855-993-2096 right now. That's 855-993-2096. If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you. Call 800-749-7781. That's 800-749-7781. Call now.
Investing in real estate doesn't have to be a pipe dream. But how do you find, analyze, renovate, finance investment properties without getting ripped off? My name's Andrew Glisson. In 4 short years, me and my team built a portfolio of 200 rental properties in multiple cities as a hobby while working full-time. We took all of that experience and built a mentorship program called the Victory Strategy to unlock every step of investing in real estate. If that sounds like the opportunity you've been waiting for, look us up at thevictorystrategy.com.
Welcome back to The New Health. We're here today with Dr. Glenn Wilcox, Doctor of Oriental Medicine and Acupuncture, owner of Wise Medicine Clinic, and now developer and creator of Wise Pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Wilcox.
It's so good to be here with you, Jessica.
So please tell me a little bit about how you got into this field of Oriental Medicine and Acupuncture. How did this come about for you?
Oh my goodness, there's a story. Okay. As a young man, I was a real spiritual seeker through my teens, exploring everything. I wanted to be one with God. I wanted enlightenment. Maybe a little arrogant as I look back on it, but nevertheless, that's what drove me. And at 22, I was very frustrated in my spiritual search. And so I did something dramatic. I said, okay, I'm sitting here. I'm going to sit here until I either die or I become one with God and enlightened. And by the graces of God and guardian angels, in 4 days I had the most profound spiritual experience. And all my questions were answered. And then I was shown a life path that involved mastering energy medicine. Now this is 50 plus years ago. I had no idea what energy medicine was. It didn't exist. And so I went, yeah, I want to do that. And 2 things there. It was not a mandate. It was like I was called to do this. It was not a mandate. It was a choice. And there was a caveat. Don't ever teach anything unless you know it's the truth. And so with that, I was back in normal space and time, and I started exploring. I grew up in Canada, born and raised there, looking at medical schools to try and find out about this energy medicine. It didn't exist. Looked in the States, nope, didn't exist. So off I went, exploring off to California, started there, thought I'd go to Asia, and that's where my journey began. And so really it was kind of a pioneering exploration into energy medicine that over the past 50 years I've evolved and incorporated a lot of traditional approaches to energy medicine, like Chinese medicine and acupuncture, with the best of conventional biomedicine that helps us to optimize our energy production, like influencing how the cell's mitochondria make ATP, which is our energy molecule. And so that's been my journey in this whole field.
So thank you so much for sharing with us. So when we talk about energy and ATP production, we're talking about the energy that is made in a cell. And when we talk about that in conventional medicine spaces, we need that for all of our body to function. And when you're talking about the Chinese medicine approach, that's with meridians, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so part of my initial journey, and I've kept that up throughout my career, is using acupuncture to help with energy optimization. And so the Chinese developed and evolved acupuncture over the last few thousand years, probably about 3,000 years, maybe more. And it's now evolved all across the world, so it's being done everywhere. And so the original concept was that acupuncture was primarily influential in balancing and harmonizing and optimizing the flow of qi. And their awareness was, their belief, and I think modern science is starting to bear this out, was that there were these energy pathways throughout our body. And along the pathways were certain specific points that had different functions. And these pathways were sort of like master control circuits that govern different organs, different functions, different systems in the body. And so somehow they figured this out thousands of years ago. And the whole system is evaluating where the energy flow in these different channels or pathways is deficient or excessive and maybe blocked. And so you're using acupuncture needles to get that circulation moving freely, to tonify it and strengthen it if it's too weak, to get it moving if it's blocked or excessive. And so acupuncture is an amazing tool for really starting to tune up this flow of energy, qi. Now, this is a key word, qi, vital energy. And conventional medicine is starting to look at this. Yep, ATP production by the mitochondria is part of it. Neurotransmission is part of it. And it can influence everything in terms of our health, including our sexuality. And so, amazing system. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there's 3 treasures talked about in Chinese medicine and in Taoism, and that is qi, that we were just talking about, this vital energy, Jing, which is vital essence, and Shen, which is spirit. And so in Chinese medicine that has evolved around the world, the real approach is looking at this holistic integration of body, mind, and spirit.
Okay, so qi is energy, Jing is vital essence, and then Shen is spirit.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So how do we incorporate these in the sense of medicine?
So my journey has been to try and translate these traditional concepts into useful tools for helping people with their health and for their sexuality. Okay, so that's been an area that has been of real interest to me in my career and in my life. And so if we have energy flowing well through these master control circuits, some of those are going to influence how our genitals function, how they feel. And so by tuning up those systems, you're going to have improved sexual pleasure and performance.
And so when you talk about this, we're talking about the reason why we bring so much round to in our topics about sexual performance and pleasure is because there's a certain vitality that, and so many of our hormones and biochemicals that are optimized when we talk about our sexual health and function. And that is what really brought you to combine those two, am I correct, into your Wise Pleasure program that you are now building and developing to incorporate with Wise Medicine. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there was a key transition period for me back in the 90s, and I'll bring that in because it ties into the Jing part of our discussion here. The Shen part, spirit, that goes back to that experience I had at 22. Wow, big Shen experience, okay? Spirit. Jing, in the 90s, I came across a book by Mantak Chia called The Multi-Orgasmic Man. And I went, well, this is interesting, and I started to read it, and I went, I'm going to do this. So I started studying it from his book, and learned that, number one, men can have orgasms without ejaculating. And this is huge, and just at the cutting edge in terms of sexual health and awareness in America. But the reason I bring it up is because in Chinese medicine, the understanding was that if men ejaculate too often, it will diminish their Jing, vital essence. And I think a lot of women have had that experience where their man just kind of enjoys himself and then kind of rolls over and goes to sleep, you know. He's not as essential as he was. Now, for women, orgasms improve Jing. Childbirth is a depleter of Jing. As many women know, after childbirth, it's like, whoa. And so this concept of Jing is really important. And so the Chinese approach was, yes, a man can ejaculate less and less frequently as they get older, but it will deplete Jing if you do it too often, and so you want to find the right interval. So learning how to have orgasms, especially for an older man, without ejaculating, helps to build Jing, preserve Jing, improve my pleasure and the pleasure of my partner. So that's where this sort of began, and I went, oh, and began exploring all aspects of sexuality in my personal life and for my patients. I do many things medically in my practice to help people with their sexuality. Bioidentical hormones, as you mentioned. Platelet-rich plasma injections into the genitals to rejuvenate the tissues there and improve function and pleasure too. So the Jing part of it began there.
Okay, so when we're talking about vital essence, sexuality and vital essence seem to then be hand in hand.
Yeah.
Is it more so than any other aspect of Chinese medicine when we talk about Jing and vital essence? I have to say, in clinical medicine, I was in OBGYN, it is a major concern. People coming in, it might have been my specialty, but I hear that with a lot of my colleagues. People are coming in with complaints of libido or sexuality, so Jing, and also it's a main reason why men go in for any kind of evaluation. It's one of the only reasons why men go in for an evaluation to their provider.
Yes, exactly so. Absolutely so. And so there are ways, sex is an intrinsic part of that vital essence that we're talking about, but there's many vectors that influence it. And Qi and Shen are also going to influence it. They're not all separate. They're all interacting with each other. So if you're improving your Qi and having it flow smoothly and harmoniously, then that's going to benefit your Jing. If your Shen, if your spirit is good and you're getting enough sleep and you're relaxed and you're enjoying your life, then that's going to help with your Jing.
I'm going to just recap. So Shen is spirit, but it's also your spirit. It's also how you are in the world.
Yes.
And so Shen is spirit, so bringing that in. And then we have Jing and bringing, so all of this is basically mind, body, spirit. Is that what you're basically saying?
Yeah.
So these three components are mind, body, spirit is how we would call it in the conventional or functional medicine space.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep. So that was they had this understanding of this years ago, and now it's very popular. People are aware, we need to look at all three, body, mind, and spirit, or you're not going to have good health, good contentment in life. So, yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilcox, for being here today. Could you please let everyone in the audience know how they can reach you and what you're working on right now?
Yes. So you can get to me easily through my website, drglennwilcox.com. 2 N's in Glenn, no period after the doctor. And that would be an easy way to get to me, and there's access to all kinds of things there. I am going to be teaching with Amara Charles a week-long course on intimacy, down in Costa Rica in May. And I think there's a link for that there. You can go to amaracharles.com and look at courses, and it's called Mystic Rapture. And so we'd love you to check that out if you want to explore as a couple. It's a very exclusive, beautiful area down in Costa Rica. And yes, love to have you down there. It's in an area in Costa Rica called the Blue Zone, which is where people live longer, and there's magic in the air down there.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wilcox. And please join us after these messages for our next guest.
How would you like to go on a 5-star vacation for just $99? We're talking about the quality of a Westgate resort for $99. Not for one night, but for 3 fantastic nights at one of their luxurious destinations across the United States. And you'll even get a free $100 Visa gift card just for making a reservation. We've got some of the choicest destinations that you'll love in the United States that you can choose from for just $99 for a 3-night stay. Take your family, take a special loved one, but get away. Go on vacation with Westgate Resorts. Call now to make a reservation for just $99, and you get a free $100 Visa gift card. Call Westgate right now and book your vacation. Here's the number.
Call 877-930-3491. That's 877-930-3491. Again, 877-930-3491.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you. Call 800-749-7781. That's 800-749-7781. Call now.
Do you have a car sitting around you want to get rid of? Well, here's a great idea. Donate your car now to help local veterans in your area. Yes, just make one fast call to the Veteran Car Donation Program. Within a few days, we'll come and remove your car for free. You can donate any car in any condition. We'll use our vast network to sell it. The proceeds raised go to help local veterans and their families. And you get a tax deduction. And all you need to do is make this free call. Clean your yard up, get rid of an old car, and help the vets. We make it easy. Make this free call now. Book your fast and easy pickup. Call the Veteran Car Donation Program now.
And we're back with Jim Benson, certified coach. He's also a certified certified Tantra coach. He teaches Tantra to people who teach Tantra, and he's joining us today to talk with us about how that relates to men's health. Welcome, Jim.
I'm happy to be here with you, Jessica.
So happy you're here. So I'd love to start right out of the gate. We've talked a little bit off screen about embodiment and presence. Can you please describe what that means to our audience?
Sure. Embodiment means to fully enter this vehicle that you are carrying around on the planet. And so many of us seem to operate from our head up, and we become more machines that are talking versus something that's actually experiencing what you're living in. And I would say that for so many people, we treat the body as a vehicle to get through the world and get things done, as opposed to this experience of a unified connection from inside to out. The challenge with that is because for a lot of people, if you feel fear or anxiety, to be able to drop into your body is a terrifying thing. Mm-hmm. So a lot of healing work needs to happen in order for you to fully embody.
Okay, so when we're talking about embody, feeling where we are, is that like feeling your emotions that you're thinking more than anything? Or feeling like your body moving through space?
Yes.
What else?
All of the above.
All of those things, okay. So, and I know we had talked a moment about presence. So is it one of those things where we become mindful, we think, okay, stop, I need to think about how I'm feeling, what my body is doing?
Yes.
So what is a practice that we would do in order to help us get into that space?
I would say there's probably several different kinds of practices. So meditation, mindfulness certainly is one. Yoga is great, as in yoga you'll be asked to hold a pose or to do some breathing, and you become more conscious of your experience of your body in that pose. There are movement practices like contact improvisation, which I love to do, and authentic movement. So again, these are practices where you're experiencing your body in space. At the same time, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to lift weights, or I'm going to do some exercise, or I'm going to ride my bike. I have a goal to get 20 miles on my bike today. It's more like, oh, what is my body needing and wanting right now? How does it want to move?
So I know for yoga, for me, I try to pay attention to my breath so I can feel it, and pay attention to how my muscles feel where I'm in a certain pose. So is that what we're talking about?
Yes, and in addition to being present to what's happening in the room at the time, and what emotion is coming up for you at any given moment, and also just tracking the thought patterns. That's where the mindfulness comes in. What am I thinking about? Where am I perseverating? Where do I keep going to? As opposed to, I'm just here, I'm present with myself, I'm enjoying this. And I think one of the keys is if we just kind of move over to presence, is how am I experiencing pleasure in my body? How does it feel good to me to be living in my body right now and be doing what I'm doing? So it's a awareness, it's a pleasure awareness practice.
Okay, so, and when we're talking about embodiment and presence, how is this working with the work you do? How do you apply that, or is this the groundwork on what you do?
It is the groundwork. In the work that I do with men, especially men who seem to be very responsible and good job, good with their kids, good husband, those guys. For them, it's about pleasure for yourself. Like, how can I find something good for me in this? And I have guys do a pleasure list, actually create a list of them for themselves, like, what is it that brings me pleasure? And we break it down into things that you can do alone or with somebody, things that cost money and don't cost money, things that I could do right now, or things that I could plan for in the future. So you want a mix of all of those things, and make sure you're doing them definitely weekly, but maybe daily and maybe more than once a day. So it could be anything from, I like to take a hot tub, and then when you're in the hot tub, you're actually experiencing the pleasure of that. Or I want to jump on the trampoline, I'm going to take a walk by the creek, or there's just whatever it is that for you that's going to bring you pleasure for yourself. And it's not being selfish. It's a way of recharging or renewing, experiencing yourself in your body, and that you have more to give to your family and friends.
That's great. And we, as the partners of the men, we want you to take care of yourselves. Please take care of yourselves so that you can be the best for yourself, the happiest for yourself, so that we can be happy in connection.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful. So this is the work you do. So you work with men mostly that are high level functioning, working, family, taking care of the household, have a spouse and children, and just trying to be the strongest king of their castle, while the world as we know it is kind of depleting. It's knocking you down a bit.
Yes.
So that's wonderful. So they find you.
Yes.
And then you give them some of these activities to do, like this pleasure list. So I want to go to this pleasure list for a minute. That's just me. I would like to go to the pleasure list. So I can imagine a lot of men that are just plowing through their day. They don't know how to do a pleasure list. So do you give them give us a few ideas of what would be on a pleasure list that would be attainable to a man that is in that space?
Right. So if we look at things you can do by yourself, a lot of men will be like, wow, I really like to get out and do my bike ride, and I just don't find time for it. I'm like, well, are you scheduling other things in your life? Yes. Well, let's schedule a bike ride in. So, there's a kind of a directiveness that I have with men to make sure that they're doing that. And then after they do it a bit, they're like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that I used to do this a lot before I had so much responsibility, and I really like it. And it's actually what might have attracted their partner to them. They're doing this thing that they're really involved in, and they love it. And the partner's like, I like that over there.
That's it. Yeah. So we love that power when men are taking their own power.
Yeah.
So that's really, really great. I mean, power in the sense of empowering themselves, making sure that they're taking care of themselves. It makes us feel safe when they do that, when they can take care of their own selves. It makes us feel like they can take care of us as well.
Right, because they're not looking to you to take care of them as much.
Yeah.
You can do that, but however you choose to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's not like you're my source.
Right.
Right, because then that starts to create separation, distance, depolarization in the relationship.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that codependency space becomes we are dependent on each other for each other's happiness, and going from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the phrases I use with men is I am a healthy, autonomous, sexual man. And I just have them work with that. And what resistances do you have to that? So one of the resistances is often like, well, I'm healthy. I don't know if I like this autonomous work. Can we change that? Because they don't want to feel separate, and then I push them on that issue. Like, oh, well, let's talk about being autonomous. And then the sexual part too is because that's what I work with guys, is having them have the healthiest sex lives that's possible for them.
So I'm healthy, autonomous,
sexual man.
Yeah. Healthy, autonomous, sexual man. And if they feel that they shrink back on any one of those, then that's where you go first for working with them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's great.
And so the autonomous one seems to trigger guys most of the time, because they want to feel like they're in connection, that they're not leaving anybody behind, especially the ones who are very either super responsible and want to feel connected to their family and friends. So that's generally the one that seems to trigger most guys.
Okay, all right. So it's learning that you can be connected and autonomous at the same time.
Exactly.
And giving them that space. I think that both men and women could learn a lot from that.
Totally.
That's, we each have our own individuality, and then in relationship together, and that makes such a deep, committed, connected relationship, especially when we see that our partner is happy and living some of their own life. It's sexy.
Yes, yes.
So we want that.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, because if there's a merging that can happen, especially if you're living together with your partner, and it can get very enmeshed, and like you said, codependency, that starts to happen, and that's where a lot of breakdowns can happen, sadly. So what can you do to create your own autonomy, but still stay connected and not be like, okay, autonomy, autonomy, autonomy. I think that's the fear, is we're going to get so far apart that we won't find common ground.
What can we do? To get that autonomy but be connected? Is it in conversation with your partner?
Well, that'd be great if you could do that.
If people do it, yes.
And to even make it that conscious, to be able to say, look, I'm doing this thing. I'm a little concerned. I'm going to be pulling away from you, but I want you to know that that's not my intention. My plan is that I have this. I can be renewed, and I can come back, and we can be together, and you'll feel me more present and alive here with you.
Yeah, I think that. I think partners, I would hope partners will see that. And if I were to go to my partner and say, look, I'm in counseling or I'm getting coaching because I want to experience life more fully and wholly with you as well, but I need to start working some on me, I think you're going to see the benefit. Will you support me in this?
That's really well said.
That's well, I can say it right now. I don't know if I can say it at home.
But you spoke to the essence of what it is that we are wanting to achieve.
Yeah.
And so what's that healthy distance, but remaining in connection? And so that you're not too far apart, But it's like you can just imagine the magnets, the polarity of magnets, where like the attraction is there and they want to come together. But now they're having this perfect distance apart so that they can have their own experience and then come back together.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for the work you do to help men in that space. Jim, thank you so much for being with us today. Will you please let everyone know what you're working on right now and how they can reach you?
Sure. My work is called The Awakened Masculine, and I'm doing one-on-one coaching with men, also doing some group work, and it's the passion. It's my life's passion and what I love to do.
Thank you so much again for being with us. You're going to join us next week?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And thank you all for being with us here today. Join us next week on the next episode of The New Health.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.
What if you could make a free phone call and reduce your car payment by as much as $83 a month? Right now, you could be paying as high as 20% interest. Your new interest rate could be reduced to as low as 2.48%. You can refinance any existing car loan or leased car and